I think that there's something slightly ludicrous about trying to make an arrangement, an instrumental arrangement of a song by Leonard Cohen.
This started as what I thought might be a throwaway thing. I would just do an easy arrangement.
This is a kind of loose use of the word variation.
An inner voice just kind of goes a little mad, and it lasts for about 2 measures.
That if you wanted to give it a different title and not call it Variations, calling it a Nocturne would be very appropriate. I'm very interested in color and in texture, and in sound being a form of speaking through a piano, but making it sound almost like you're saying something that's approaching speech, but it's through music.
The song Suzanne is not the usual fare for grand piano passion. Yet I found myself admiring the song's seductive, haunting quality when I researched a mini documentary on the making of the Cohen Variations, which I'm pleased to bring all of you, followers of grand piano passion. When the concert pianist Simona Dinnerstein and the New York composer Danny Felsenfeld discovered that they both loved the song Suzanne, Miss Dinnerstein commissioned a piano solo. Mr. Felsenfeld named his resulting creation the Cohen Variations, a witty allusion to Bach's Goldberg Variations, and Miss Dinnerstein recorded the music for her new album, Night. I'm Nancy Williams. Join me as we explore the making of the Cohen Variations, which fuses elements of classical piano music such as counterpoint, inner voices, and variations with Leonard Cohen's tribute to his muse, Suzanne.
Suzanne, which is a song by Leonard Cohen, is one of my favorite songs, and I was talking about it with Danny Felsenfeld, and he said that it was one of his favorite songs too.
And she told me at this very table where we're sitting that she had always wanted to play it as an encore and have an arrangement. And I said, well, I could do that pretty easily.
I think that there's something slightly ludicrous about trying to make an arrangement, an instrumental arrangement of a song by Leonard Cohen, because his music is really all about the poetry. It's about the words.
This started as what I thought might be a throwaway thing. I would just do an easy arrangement for Simona. I would do it quickly. It would take me, a weekend, and I'd be done with it. And it took me a good deal longer than that, and it turned out to be something quite different than that. The hardest part about reinventing a song like this for a solo instrument is that there's a very grave sense of what's not there that's from the song. When you're doing an instrumental version, you have 2 choices. You can just kind of leave the lyrics out and let the thing exist as just an arrangement, which I thought was kind of dull. Or you can be responsible to the fact that there's something missing.
I think that what he did was he really got to the subtext of the poetry, and one of the ways that I feel that he really captured it was by making the music contrapuntal. And oftentimes the interesting parts of the music are taking place in the inner line. Some of the writing is on 3 staves, and you see that the middle voice has this very interesting kind of counter melody that might be slightly dissonant with the outer voices. And I think that it gives this feeling of tension in the music, which is there in the poetry. the actual song, Suzanne, is incredibly repetitive, as are most of Leonard Cohen's songs. There's a kind of almost a drone to them. And the song itself is almost a set of variations, if you think about it. I mean, it's really about seeing somebody in different ways. And so I think that this is a kind of loose use of the word variation.
There's lots of things you can do to make variations. You can make things go faster, you can thicken the texture, you can thin out the texture, you can modulate. In the folk tradition, you never change key. It's just, you barely change chord. And that's fine, because it is a way of using the lyrics as a kind of pattern, and then the music is a means of communication. And I think that's very important. But when you don't have the lyrics, you have to communicate strictly on musical terms. So one of the things you can do is modulate. Every one of my variations is in a different key. And then other things, like you make inner voices, or you put the melody on top, or you put the melody on the bottom, or you put the melody in the middle, or you have things that kind of swoop around it. Or sometimes I would take a little bit of liberty with the melody. I would stretch it, I would add a bar, I would contract things.
It's not variations in the way that you might see something like the Brahms Handel variations, where each one is distinctly exploring a different type of technique or intervals or rhythm or something like that. This is more that it's shifting. It's a song that is shifting through keys.
It's not really variations. It is more like the Cohen Nocturne, which isn't a very good title. But it is kind of like a rumination. And night is, I don't know, I'm a lifelong insomniac, and I've written a lot of music about that. I wrote a big piano piece called Insomnia Redux, 4 a.m., which is about that moment of terror when you know you're not going to be able to go to sleep, and, stretching that moment out into like a 15-minute super varied piano piece. And so this to me is like the sort of softer side of that, when it's a calmer night and it's a more reflective night.
That if you wanted to give it a different title and not call it Variations, calling it a Nocturne would be very appropriate. The music is almost blurred, almost as if the edges haven't been clearly defined in the music. And I think that that's something that feels like music that you would play at night. The inner voices of the Cohen variations are often the most interesting part of the music. I'm interested in music that is contrapuntal. I think that it's much more interesting than having a dominant melody with accompaniment. And I guess that might be one of the reasons why I relate to Bach's music so much, is that there are many different things happening at the same time that are all interesting. And Danny knows that about me, and knows how I like many lines, and also I think he understood that I like lyricism, and that I'm drawn to sounds that are more subtle.
One of my favorite parts, and it is largely due to the way Simona plays it, is here at measure 34, when it's the one time where an inner voice just kind of goes a little mad, and it lasts for about 2 measures. So there's a moment where it just kind of collapses into 16th notes and goes fast, fast, fast. And then, in a way, it sets up for the fact that even though the rest of the piece is mostly slow, you have the memory of the fast music hopefully going in your head. She's such a good Bach player that it's really the only serious Bach moment where she gets to like do what Bach players do well, which is like have 2 or 3 voices going on at one time and keeping track of them all with only these 10 fingers of her.
Chopin's nocturnes are very, very interesting harmonically and also contrapuntal in their own way. And I think that that in that sense, the Cohen variations relates to his nocturnes. Well, Chopin's nocturnes, he often will take notes in the left hand and have 2 stems on them, because he wants certain notes to kind of come out of the texture more than other notes in a more melodic way. And oftentimes your thumbs, which kind of represent the inner voices, are quite active in the nocturnes. So I've always felt that, you know, you have to find in Chopin's music that inner voice that is speaking all the time, as well as the bass line, which is always very important too. So the harmony in Chopin's music has a melodic role.
Advice for people who want to play the music. First, go listen to the Leonard Cohen song, because I feel like if you just play the rhythms of what would be the vocal part as written, it might not work effectively. But if you listen to the fact that it is a singer who isn't obligated to quarter notes and eighth notes, he's a little freer on the beat when he needs to be, and that's an open invitation to do that, to like take the melody as just sort of a guide rather than as the strictest notational exercise. Don't be afraid to just play with it. Don't be afraid to like, you know, take sections at a time, learn one of the variations, you know, learn the first page, and to, you know, there's a valid thing to climbing a mountain, even if nobody knows that you've climbed that mountain. I think that's what's difficult about a virtuoso piece like this, is that it doesn't have the sort of immediate gratification of like, wow, what can you do? But it's a more personal inward gratification, I would hope.
So for other people that would want to learn to play this piece, I would say that it's an incredibly satisfying experience to work on it. And it's not a virtuosic piece in the sense that you're not playing a million notes at 90 miles per hour, but it has other challenges, which is how to create different colors in a range that is usually in sort of a piano dynamic range. I mean, occasionally it breaks out of that and becomes very open and big, but a lot of the piece is quite introverted.
The Cohen variations is a very different object than the song Suzanne. And so I suspect that the emotions it evokes are very different. I mean, as a composer, I feel responsible for evoking, but I don't feel responsible for specific emotions. And I borrowed a lot of the emotion of the song, but played with it, you know, in my own fashion.
It's an incredible song, and the song comes through in this piece, and so it's a way of being able to be a singer at the piano, which I think is great.